Taking a look at example 1 now. A nominal annual interest rate of 5% is compounded weekly. What is the effective interest rate? So, before we try to think of which formula to use, it is always important that we first identify each and every variable that we're given. So, we know that we have the nominal interest rate, which is 0.05 in decimals, but of course, as a percentage, that would be 5%. Then we're told that this is compounded weekly. So, implying that within a year, we get the number of weeks, which is 52. So our I becomes 52 because that is the number of times it is compounded within a year. So what we are looking for is the effective interest rate. So with that, we see that formula 3 is the relevant formula to apply. So we take that formula, and that is the formula right there, formula 3. The next step is to substitute for the variables that were given. So we know that the nominal interest rate is 0.05, so we substitute for that. And we see that the I is 52, so we are going to substitute I with 52, and that is in 2 places. With that then, the next step is to make sure that we deal with what's inside the pair of brackets or parentheses. Before we continue with that, if we have fractions, like in this case, 0.05 divided by 52, we may want to know what this is in a simplified manner. We see that that becomes 0.00096. Great. Now we can move on to add what's inside the pair of brackets or parentheses before we deal with the powers, because each and every step is crucial. That's one. The second thing that we have to note also is the number of decimals are important. And I encourage you, if you are going to simplify your work, if you're going to evaluate whatever you have, make sure to go as far as 4 or 5 decimal places so that you don't compromise a lot on the particular accuracy of the question. Right, so with that, we are going to add what we have inside the pair of brackets or parentheses so that we have the effective interest rate being 1.00096 raised to the power 52 minus 1. Then the next step, of course, would be to compute what this is. So computing that raised to the power 52, we are going to get 1.05116 minus 1. And of course, this is easier to simplify so that we get our effective interest rate is 0.05116 in decimals. Therefore, as a percentage, we get our answer as 5.12%. And that's how we get the answer to this particular example. Moving on to example 2. A bank charges nominal annual interest rate of 6%, which is compounded every 2 years. What is the effective interest rate? So, as before, we look at what variables we are given from the question. So it's easy to see that we are given the nominal interest rate, which is 0.06 in decimals. And of course, that means 6%. And the I, take note of this particular I. It happens in every 2 years, implying that a single year has half of what we would need or what would be compounded. 2 years is just one compound. So 1 year is half of that. Therefore, our I becomes half or 0.5. Great. So we see that we are looking for the effective interest rate, given the nominal interest rate as well as the I. So equation 3 would be ideal. Right, so equation 3 is that And substituting for the nominal interest rate, we are going to have 0.06 in place of our norm, and the I, we have 0.5 in two places. So we check to see if we have substituted for everything that we have to substitute for before we proceed. And it seems we have. Then we deal with the fraction which is within the brackets or parentheses. So that fraction over there, 0.06 divided by 0.5, would give us a 0.12. Great. Now we can add what's inside the pair of brackets or parentheses so that we get 1.12, and that being raised to the power 0.5. Now we move on to evaluate that which is powered to the power 0.5. So now when we compute that, we are going to get 1.0583 minus the 1. In subtracting that, we are going to get a 0.0583. That is in decimals. And I also emphasize it is crucial and important that we make sure that our decimal places are either 4 or 5 decimal places. And if we can keep our answers exact, that would be the best idea. Keep your answers as exact as possible. Now that we have that, it implies that the effective interest rate in percentage is going to be 5.83%. And note, this interest rate is lower than that of 6% because of the compounding period. This is beyond 1 year. Great then, so with that, we are going to also consider the third example. So stay tuned as we work on the third example. So in the third example, this is what we have. For an effective interest rate of 15% per annum, what is the nominal annual interest rate when compounded monthly? As before, we check the variables that are given. So we see that we have the effective interest rate of 0.15, 15% in other words. And now this is compounded monthly, implying that the I is equal to 12. So with these variables that we have, and also the variable that we're looking for, which is the nominal annual interest rate, the ideal formula to use is formula 4. So we can use either of the two from 4. Right, so we are going to use the first one. So substituting for the effective annual interest rate, or rather for the effective interest rate, we are going to have that as 0.15, and also the I is 12. And take note of the formula. This one is an amazing formula, and we just have to know how to compute it so that we are not caught by surprise. So now evaluating what is inside the brackets or pair of parentheses, we are going to get 1.15 within the pair of brackets. Those are the curved ones. Then now we can move on to find the 12th root. So this is the same as having the 12th root or raising that to the power 1 divided by 12. That's another way of doing it. So in doing so, we are going to get 1.0117. Now we consider what's within the square brackets or parentheses. Now we subtract that so that we get 0.0117. And remember, that is being multiplied by a 12. So multiplying that by a 12, we are going to get a 0.1406. That is in decimals. So if that is in decimals, this implies that as a percentage, we are going to get 14.06%. And note, this nominal interest rate is lower than the effective interest rate, and that is what is expected within a year. So that is the